Chapter 4 in the Essays textbook is about active reading strategies that you can use when you are reading a journal or a piece of literature that you need to respond to in writing. Because there's such a connection between reading and writing, you need to understand how to actively engage with the text when you're reading so that you can then write about it later. Your first essay of this course is going to be an essay called a summary and response, meaning you will read a journal or a short story and you will read it, summarize it, and then respond to it. So the purpose of this lecture and of reading this chapter in the textbook is to teach you how to actively engage with that journal as you're reading it, so then writing about it will become much easier for you. So the first thing to keep in mind when you are reading is that you should go through and do a couple of different strategies as you're reading, one of which is called underlining. You could also highlight. What this means is after you read a paragraph or a section and you have a sense of what that part of the journal article is about, you want to go back and underline or highlight the key terms. What's key here is you need to focus on main ideas, not details. So people have the tendency to over-highlight and over-underline because everything sounds important. That's why you want to read through it first and then go back and do the underlining, because then you can discern between what's a main idea and what maybe can be left aside. So for example, look at this paragraph behind me. I have, dieting causes people to gain weight. This is because inevitably people go off their diets and then often overeat as a reward. People also prepare for diets by binging beforehand, which causes them to pack on pounds before the diet begins. So that's my paragraph. I wouldn't want to underline or highlight everything, I just want to hit the main ideas. I also don't highlight or underline entire sentences, but just keywords. So if this was a paragraph in the journal I was reading, I would underline and there's not a hard or fast rule to this, but I think the key words in this paragraph is that diet makes people gain weight, and the reasons are when they go off their diets, they overeat as a reward, and they binge beforehand. Some of these other supporting details I would leave out, and again, I wouldn't underline entire sentences. So as you're reading the text that you're preparing to write about, read the section, go back, underline or highlight main ideas, because you're then going to use that when you write your summary. As you're writing, so this you read, you go back and do. As you're writing, you want to do something called annotating. Annotating is simply making notes in the margin of the text as you're reading. The difference between annotating and highlighting is here I'm just indicating what was important out of what the author said. When I'm annotating, I'm analyzing what the author said and including my own questions, opinions, experiences, etc. So as I was reading this, I might wonder, let's say I don't know what binging means. So I would put a question here in the margin with that word and a question, meaning I'm not sure what that means. If as I'm reading this I can connect to it on a personal level and think I've done that before, then I would put a little mark in the margin that talks about the last diet I went on. When I went off it, I gained 25 pounds. I would put that note. I gained 25 pounds after Atkins, or whatever it is. So as I'm annotating, I'm thinking of my own experiences, I'm asking questions about things I don't understand, I'm connecting to the text. If it reminds me of a movie I saw, or a different book I read, or a different article I read, I would put that note in the margin as well. Again, if there's a word I don't understand, I would indicate that. So all of this engagement with the text, I'm keeping track of. Coming back to why we're doing this, your summary and response, your response is going to be just that. How did you connect to the text? How did you respond to it? What personal experiences did it remind you of? Do you agree with the author? Do you disagree with the author? So the marks you make in the margin when you're analyzing, in your annotating, is going to be what you'll use in the response section of your essay. So again, your essay is going to be summary and response. A summary is just a shortened version of another person's writing. So let's say you read a 3-page article and you are going to summarize it. The rule of thumb is you generally want to reduce it by 2/3. So in a 3-page article, you would write a 1-page summary using your own words rather than the author's words, condensing it down to just the main ideas. When you're writing a summary, main ideas, leave out the details because you're taking that whole work that the author wrote and condensing it down to a shortened version. When you write this essay, you are going to use some of the author's words exactly, particularly in the reaction section, where you'll list what an author said and then write how you reacted to it. So whenever you use someone else's words or ideas, you need to document that. So this essay is going to be our first foray into using proper MLA documentation. So I just want to introduce this to you. If you are using someone else's words, you need to give that author credit, and you need to tell the reader where he or she can go to find exactly what that author said. So let me give you 2 examples of a parenthetical citation is what it would be called that you would be using in your upcoming essay. I'm going to give you 2 examples. Okay, so let's say I'm citing this particular quote in my essay, and I have Matthews argues adults often place too much pressure on small children. And if Matthews, which is the author's name, if he used those exact words, I have to indicate those are his words and not mine. So I would put quotes around exactly what he said, just like we talked about with regard to punctuating dialogue. Okay, and you would punctuate it the same. Now, as per MLA documentation, I've already said the author's name here in the identifying tag. I've already given him credit. So now all I need to do is direct my reader to where he or she can go to find this information. So what I would do is give a paragraph number or a page number. The way this works is you would remove this period here and add a parenthetical notation. Because I already listed the author's name, all I have to do is list the page number or the paragraph number. So if it was on page 56, I would just put the page number, close parentheses, period. And that tells my author, Matthews said this, my reader, excuse me, Matthews said this on this page. If it's a page number, you just put the number. If it's a paragraph number, then you put P for paragraph and the number, okay? If you don't use the author's exact name in the identifying tag, and you just say, for example, the author argues, then you have to give that author credit here in the parenthetical notation, the parenthetical citation. So then you would put the author's name and the page number. And here in this citation, your reader would have all the information he or she needed to know who the author is and where to find it. We'll talk about this more, but then at the end of your essay, you would have a works cited page that lists all the different authors that you cited and the exact name of the article and publication information, so the reader really could find that text and find the exact quotation that you used. If you don't use a direct quotation, but you're paraphrasing, you wouldn't then have the quotations because it was not the author's exact words, but you still need to give credit to the person that gave you this idea. So you would still list where the reader can find that information. So again, this chapter 4, is all about actively engaging with the text as you're reading it, so that later when you need to respond to it in some way, you have a good, solid understanding of what you read, so that you can really be analytical and synthesize that information and analyze that information, evaluate that information, rather than having to go back and reread again in order to comprehend it in the first place.